Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Kennebunkport Zoning Board of Appeals. It's Monday, July 13th, and this is a hybrid meeting, so it's via Zoom and also in person. And the public is welcome to join via Zoom or in person. So we will begin tonight's evening with the calling of the roll. I'm just going to do first names, if that's okay with everybody. Kate.
Here.
Paul, here. Alan.
Here.
Kevin.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
And also up here is April Defoe. She's a former member who is coming back up for another term, but she hasn't been sworn in yet, so she's going to be just observing things tonight. She's not a voting member tonight. Okay, so first thing I want to do is to check out the minutes that we were provided of the last meeting, which was that the 8th or the 22nd?
22nd, I think.
I don't have them before.
Oh, here they are.
Oh, July 22nd. Sorry,
June 22nd, yeah.
June, sorry, June. I'm off to an auspicious start there. So has everybody had an opportunity to look them over?
Yes.
Great, everybody is eligible to vote on them.
Yep.
I just need to bring them up for a minute. Does anybody have any comments with regard to the first page?
Just one nitpick. My name is not hyphenated.
All right. So
Going forward.
We'll note that to be corrected. Thank you.
Happens all the time.
The second page. Anybody have a comment on the second page? I have one, but I don't have the minutes up in front of me right now. But in the first paragraph, in the first paragraph on page 2, there's a line that says something to the effect that yeah. Do you have them right there? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me have page 2, please.
It's double-sided, so flip it over.
The first paragraph, about 3 type lines down, it says, Mr. Cardigan clarified that even with the additional lots from the tax map, there are no new abutters identified who will need to be notified of the proceedings. That's not quite right. I did not clarify that. I was asking that, and then I think the next line should be that Mr. Braun agreed that that is true. I think that Mr. Braun stated that that is true. That's my understanding. So I'd like to have that change made. So I'd remove the word clarified, and Mr. Cardigan asked that even with the additional lots from the tax map, there are no new abutters identified who will need to be notified of the proceedings. Then it should be a question mark, and then Mr. Braun stated that is true. That's my only correction on page 2. Page 3, any questions, any statements? Nope. Page 4? Page 5? Any other comments at all with regard to the minutes? Nope. Okay, so I would entertain a motion that we accept the minutes except for as modified by our comments this evening.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. Minutes. So since the last meeting, we've had a considerable amount of materials submitted, and many of the materials came after our 7-day deadline as imposed by our bylaws, so we can vote to accept them. I'm making reference to bylaw, it's under voting, and it's the 6th bullet. So I'm going to tick off my list of these materials. I'm not reviewing them for content, I'm just listing them for our purposes, and then we can discuss if we're going to accept them all for the purposes of this meeting and for our deliberations. So, from the applicant's attorney, Attorney Braun, I have a letter dated June 25th, 2026 that had multiple attachments. I have a second letter from Attorney Braun dated July 13th, 2026, also with multiple attachments. And then in addition, submitted by email, we don't need to admit the email, but Attorney Braun submitted by email, also dated July 13th, 2026, duly executed authorization form allowing for his representation by all of the entities that we will at least pass in, discuss in passing comment. Is that everything that you recall from your submissions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. To the extent that you'd like me to more specifically identify the documents in each of those submissions, I'm happy to, but otherwise, I believe those three primary submissions with their attachments are the entirety of what I've submitted.
Okay, thank you. We are not going to identify them at this time. Thank you very much, though, for that. Then with regard to Code and Planning Coordinator Nadia Crockett-Curran, who is not with us this evening, there was an email that she sent to the board dated July 10th, 2026 that had, as I recall, two attachments. The first attachment I just want to grab it if I can find it. It's not it. Here it is. First attachment is from, it's the State of Maine Child Care Facility Licensing Rule, identified as 10-148 Code of Maine Rules, Chapter 32. In addition, there was a letter, actually not a letter, it was a memorandum from our new code enforcement officer, Mr. Demers, dated July 10, 2026, having to do with the sanitation facilities at the applicant's property. So that's what I have as a list of all the subsequent submissions. Does anybody note anything else about anything else that was submitted?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
Except for what's in front of me.
Does anybody,
That's the July, that's today's.
Yeah.
before making a motion, does anybody have any issue with including all of these materials in our record and allowing them for consideration during our deliberations? All good?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So pursuant to the bylaws, the sixth bullet under voting, I would entertain a motion that we vote on accepting and considering what of these would be deemed late submissions so that we can consider them and add them to the record.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, I'd like hands and a verbal, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good. So it's unanimous. All those materials are submitted to the record and are available to us for deliberation. So a little bit of housekeeping. So now I'm going to ask for the applicant's attorney to come up, and before you move into any additional presentation that you're going to give us tonight, Attorney Braun. So for the record, we are, I ask that these be detailed on our agenda. So I'm going to read the agenda with regard to the item before us today. Timothy Spang, Spangland LLC, Crooked Pine School LLC, conditional use continued. So this is a continued hearing from that which we started on June 22nd of this year. The applicant is seeking approval for a child care center, a nature-based outdoor educational program for children under 16 to be carried out across 5 of the applicant's properties. Map 14, Block 2, Lots 39, which is owned by Spangland LLC. Lot 39A, which is owned by 10 Granite LLC. 39B, which is owned by Jameson Spang. 11A, which is owned by Parsonage LLC. And 5, which is owned by Parsonage LLC. All the lots are in the farm and forest zone. So that's how it's stated on our agenda. I would note that all of the owners are not necessarily applicants, but all of the owners are, well, I'll let you explain that, Attorney Pond. So go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. In pursuant to the last time we were before the board, we have submitted some additional materials to amend the application to include several additional properties. Initially, this application included only 2 parcels, those located at 20 Granite Heights Road and 10 Granite Heights Road. They've since been amended to include those properties located at 23 Granite Heights Road, the Arundel Road, and Parsonage Road's property, just as the chairs identified them to be 2-39, 39A, 39B, 11A, and 5. And as the board noted, the intention is not, generally to conduct largely these activities on any one of these lots. Instead, the activities and programs that take place at this location are of a nature and we will say farm education basis and manner. And because of that, these activities spread out into the woods and into the undeveloped areas over each of these parcels. But that does not mean, of course, that each of these will be a primary location for any sort of instruction or ongoing significant activity. More than anything, this exhaustive list has intended to be all-inclusive so that to the extent that these activities do mistakenly or without full knowledge leak on to another one of the abutting properties, it's been contemplated in this application and approval for the activity has been granted for that specific lot number. And so leaving the meeting at the last time, what we did was on or about June 25th, I submitted an amended list of abutters with tax maps and full lists of all individuals for each of those necessary properties. I will note to the chair that I was mistaken in my initial presentation to the board where I anticipated there would be no additional notices requested. This exhaustive list did result in there being an initial 7 notices that were issued to the general public. At this point, the applicant feels confident that a notice has been given to all necessary parcel owners and that all relevant tax maps and lots that are relevant to this process have been identified and included. Today, what I've submitted in addition, it seems like a thick packet, but in reality, the important aspects of it are simply the deeds identifying and demonstrating ownership of each of these properties for the named record owner, as well as the tax cards for those missing properties, and an updated authorization signed by either a member or a manager of each of the entities, the identified owners that we've discussed. The only other, and it did come as a second or an additional submission that we made since the last meeting was town staff had requested a specific answer or identification of how we might address section 240-6.3 of the Kennebunkport zoning ordinance that had to do with soil suitability. My understanding there in fielding the question was this specific zoning ordinance of the town requires that anything after June 13th, 2006, any lot which has not previously received planning board review and approval, to have an activity or to further develop it, it must be served by its own septic system located entirely within its boundaries. And here, of course, if you will recall from the application, the intention is to have these wooden platforms upon which the tents, these outdoor learning centers will be located, and they will be located themselves on a parcel which is otherwise wholly undeveloped. And thus there is no self-contained septic system on that parcel for which to approve when we go to seek approval for those raised platforms and the tent structures. And so in answer to the code enforcement's request as to how would we address that, I've indicated that I think the appropriate method there is to simply ask for a waiver of that requirement by the planning board. And as the, I believe the town staff has pointed out to the zoning board of appeals here, any requirements or obligations as it relates to sewage disposal or the septic system or the toilet, as it may be required by the state of Maine, are obligations or requirements that can also be requested waiver for. And so that's, to the extent necessary, that's what we would also intend to do with the state of Maine. And I believe that is all the materials and fully exhaustive explanation of what we've submitted. And so with then having provided notice to all of the remaining butters, providing the proof of ownership and proof of authorization to the board as part of the record here. With this additional answer as it relates to our intended request for a waiver when the applicant goes to the planning board for approval of those structures. And then what we may have as far as a special condition to discuss, just as far as the language of the way it would read to any proposed findings of fact and decision. I think that is a full and exhaustive list of what we have and what we've done. And with that, we would ask the board to accept the application as has been amended to approve the conditional use for these 5 listed parcels.
Okay, thanks. Questions for the applicant's attorney?
Attorney, I need the microphone closer to your mouth and directly in front of your mouth. You can pull it up. Feel free to move that gooseneck. Thank you.
Better?
Yes, much.
I don't remember the last time I was told I wasn't loud enough. I'll take it.
Kate, were you contemplating something?
Well, I'm a little confused. That's not terribly unusual. I'm a little confused on the point you made last. Is that in here? Where am I seeing
What
that?
was the point?
The point that.
Concerning the findings of fact,
Yeah,
and any
sorry.
special conditions?
I guess
or-
I haven't looked at the
Well, that's
findings
all
of
right, you
fact yet, so.
don't need to, but what was the subject?
I think the question I had was, it seemed like there were 2 issues that dealt with waste disposal, septic systems versus whatever. One, state-driven because of possible childcare licensing requirements, and then you're referring to something that is based on a town requirements. So I guess this is where I'm getting a little confused. Sorry.
Yeah, well, Attorney Brown can do his best to do that, but my understanding of what he was just saying was that with regard to the town's requirement,
Right.
and we had a letter from the code enforcement officer
Right.
talking about the filing of an
Okay.
HHE 200
Mm-hmm.
for the
Okay.
property. He mentioned 2 things. One was that the applicant intends on seeking a waiver of the soil suitability requirement that's in chapter 246.3, because the language, it's fair interpretation of the language there to say that you gotta have it for each lot. The applicant's position is that they're gonna be seeking a waiver of that very specific language because they don't have activities that warrant that for each.
Okay.
Because that's fair.
That's fair to say.
Point.
I think we would also probably argue that because of the access and usability of the other, that too would be a
Right.
reason for the waiver.
So that was one point that he was making, and then,
I thought it was one, were you making a point there that was somewhat conditioned on, that was conditioned on their applicable if there was a structure and there was a question you were proposing that the tents somehow either be waived from being considered a structure?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
No,
thank
no,
you.
no, no. And I could, and candidly too, either lost in communication or just overlooked. I don't know that I saw the staff memos from the 10th. So if there were two submitted to the board and they have questions or comments, forgive me and maybe ask those or be sure that I'm working on the same info there. But specific to that, as it related to the HHE 200 and section 240-6.3 of your town ordinance, in 2000, from what I understand, and this is just plain language of it, as of June of 2006, any lot that hasn't previously received a planning board review and approval, and is before the planning board for some sort of permit application and approval, has to be able to demonstrate that it has its own septic system located entirely within its boundaries.
Okay.
And because where the plan here is to build these
Tents.
yes, ma'am,
Yeah.
on a lot that's currently wholly undeveloped and does not itself have a fully contained, or doesn't have in fact any septic system, we would seek to have that ordinance requirement waived when we go to the planning board for those applications, for the permits.
does that answer what you were looking for there?
Yes.
Now, and were you saying that you were, Attorney Brown, were you saying that you did not receive a copy of a memorandum that we received from the code enforcement officer with regard to sanitation?
I received an email from them dated the end of June asking for us to address this issue or this specific question. I did not otherwise, and in fact, I think, honestly, this might be the answer to it. I think that communication was originally sent to Patrick Brady, who often, another attorney, who often works for the applicant. And that original email that I received was sent to him first. And so it may be that those were sent to him by accident or something else. But I saw the email from the town staff, which I replied to. But to the extent there's been a formal memo filed, I have not seen it.
This was a memorandum dated June 10, 2026 to the zoning board with regard to subsurface wastewater review for 20 Granite Heights Road. That's the document I'm making reference to from Mike Demers, code enforcement officer.
I've not seen that.
All right. Do we have a copy of that printed?
We can get a digital file for him to
Okay, great.
look at. Yeah.
So that's something that you haven't seen, so that you haven't addressed. It's only 3 paragraphs. Let me read it for the record.
Please, yeah.
You'll still get a copy.
My hope
of
is that we already have, I hope, addressed it. Maybe we haven't.
It's 4 paragraphs, actually. I have reviewed this is the contents of the memorandum. I reviewed the application and the applicant's June 22, 2016 statement regarding sanitary facilities. The proposal adds a child care center to a property containing an existing single-family residence. Although the applicant proposes to provide a serviced portable toilet for the child care use, the proposed change in use must be evaluated under the main subsurface wastewater disposal rules to determine the wastewater design requirements for the combined uses. Pursuant to section 240, 11(4)D of the Kennebunkport Land Use Ordinance, a completed plumbing permit application, including a site evaluation, must be submitted when the nature of the proposed use requires a subsurface wastewater disposal system. Under section 240, 11(4)L, the applicant bears the burden of demonstrating compliance with the ordinance. I recommend the board require the applicant to submit an HHE 200 prepared by a Maine licensed site evaluator The evaluation will determine the required wastewater design flow and whether the existing or proposed wastewater disposal facilities are adequate to serve the combined residential and childcare use. This documentation will also be required for state plumbing approval following any local approval. So that's the contents of the memorandum that we received.
In response, I guess what I would, say there first and foremost is,
I understand you haven't seen this,
I
so
haven't.
this is catching you blind. I
Yeah,
thought you
yeah,
had
no.
received a copy, so.
I think what I keep kind of hearing here, and I just want to make sure that we're sort of, limited to the extent we can be or we should be, is a lot of requirements or conditions that should be considered in taken up by the planning board. I mean, I appreciate that the applicant may be required to obtain a plumbing permit based on what is being, considered here. But I don't think that that's necessarily something that should be made a condition of this approval. I think that's just something to be identified by the staff to the planning board when we seek out those permits and approvals. So I think the ability to meet any and all wastewater obligations would be something relevant to the planning board, and I would think something that they would necessarily take up in their review of any construction application. And so, I guess my long way of saying that we don't necessarily disagree. I just don't know that right now or as part of, this board's approval, those further conditions or obligations are either correct or necessary. And so I might just, say that as it relates to speaking, back against any further requirements or, or conditions of approval. And where was it? I just wanted to, and I did see, and I just wanted to speak it out loud to the board for this. I noted in the town ordinance section 240-2.2. Again, we're here for the conditional use approval for the child care use, and the ordinance defines it, as quote, whether or not licensed by the state of Maine. And I guess that, kind of comes back to our primary, a point here or argument with adding too much in the way of conditional approvals or additional requirements on the applicant, is that, we agree that under the ordinance, the activities in question fall under this category, and therefore we're here seeking that approval from the town to use the real property in this way, to get real property rights from the town as it relates to this activity and to this use. But I do just want to make sure that we understand to keep, or the best we can, to keep it separate from what may or may not then be future licensing requirements with the state of Maine, or what may or may not be future requirements with the planning board. So I think that's my way of saying, certainly vet it all, make sure we're aware of it, but I don't know that, in answer to the memo, that committing to plumbing permits or further subsurface review or analysis now is either necessary or the right stage.
I understand your point. You were just making reference to the definition of child care center under 240-2.2.
I did, yeah, I hope that's right.
It is.
Okay.
That's a correct reference. So, and what is your point there that you're making out of that definition? Yeah,
that I believe it indicates whether or not licensed by the state of Maine. So the ordinance explicitly identifies or acknowledges that there can be or may be a distinction between activities that fall within the definition as set by the ordinance and activities that may require future administrative permitting or approvals from the state.
Okay, that's what you'd propose, how that definition should be read.
Correct.
Other questions for the applicant's attorney?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. but I'll wait for questions
Well,
since you
comments
stated.
are fine. I mean, or do you want to wait till we have a discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin? you
Well,
have-
mine isn't necessarily for the attorney, I don't think so, maybe this isn't the right time, but I saw the letter from code enforcement, and I was still trying to parse through those requirements and understand it. And I'm not sure I
Right.
fully understand what was written there and what the requirements are yet.
Um,
Mr. Chair, I'm Jacques Gagnon Jr.
You have to go to the microphone.
Sorry.
I'm Jacques Gagnon Jr., the direct abutter, and I just got the notice today, and I have a public hearing in Kennebunkport at 7 p.m., and there's not enough time for me to do this, my concerns and so forth, and I was away last week. The post office left me the certified mail in my mailbox dated 7/9.
You're asking if we could hear you at this time because you have another
Perhaps.
commitment tonight?
I mean, I have about 3 minutes, and I have not had any time to really look at this, but I would like to at least get a few things into the record if I could.
Okay, could you have a seat for 1 minute? I understand. Attorney Braun, do you mind if we
Not at
go
all.
out of order and we take this? Does anybody on the board have any problem with us? You can, make sure you're clear on who you are and how you're related to this, please.
Yeah, Jacques Gagnon Jr. I'm 200 Arundel Road, a direct abutter to 2 of these lots and several of at least 2 of the lots that are imposed. I really am not opposed to the use, but I do have a few concerns. The defining of the boundary of my property so that the activities do not leak onto my property, as previously stated, and that they may leak onto the others. I did listen to a little bit of the meetings, and I heard that there were going to be some wood stoves in the tents. There's not much fire protection out there, and I would ask that those be installed in a licensed or code-compliant manner with parts and so forth, cleaned on a regular basis. There's a lot of activity out there. There's a road that went through there a year or 2 ago that accesses, I'm not sure what they're doing back there, but I think it's a creating of some pasture that's been opened up for some time. And just be concerned about the pedestrian safety with the trucks that go back and forth through there. Those are my main concerns. I really only had about an hour to look at this when I came back. I was out of town on a wedding last week, and I was not aware of this until just now. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you for addressing those. I can't speak for the entirety of the board, but one thing that I know the board can't do is to govern any issue with regard to crossing of a border. I mean, we can only, if there is an approval, it would only be approval for the property that's brought before us. It would not be an approval for any property that was not brought before us. But we couldn't really, it wouldn't be up to this board to arbitrate that.
So you're saying I would have to post it or put up a fence or something?
I'm not making any recommendation at all. That's not mine to do.
Okay, well,
I mean, but
I'm
people are
not
not.
looking for you to solve those problems.
People
Those are my
are-
concerns.
People are not allowed to trespass on other property, particularly if it's properly
It's-
noticed in the
It's
state of.
very undeveloped back there. You can't tell where you are unless you have a GPS or something.
Yeah.
And so, that's all.
Okay,
I've got to go.
all right, thank you. Why don't you come back up, Attorney Brown?
So Paul, I was trying to parse through the memo from code enforcement, and I also understand that you just heard it for the first time, so maybe this isn't the right time to talk about it, maybe, with the attorney, but at some point I want to
Discuss it.
better understand what was intended by the note, because I'm not sure I looked at the code and I looked at your comments, and I'm not sure that I fully understand it, and I don't know if it's in regards to the fact that there's some platforms with the tents, you know, on the one parcel, and I think, is that the same place where the porta potties are? Yeah.
Where they would be proposed.
Yes. And so was the intent of the note to say that if you have those platform tents on that one parcel, then you need to meet the requirements of 240-11, is that?
So, we do have the code enforcement officer here tonight.
Yeah, I know, I'm looking at it. So should we do it
Made sure that we
later?
had specific questions.
Yeah,
geared towards it.
we'll bring you up shortly.
Yeah,
So why don't we hold on that
Okay.
until we have a chance to bring
Sounds
him up?
good.
And then Attorney Barr can always respond to anything that he says.
sounds great.
Alan? Nothing on your side? Over here? I'd like you to address, I do have one question with regard to the, you know, we were provided, as you heard, a copy of the child care facility licensing rule. And it was presented to us that indeed this use would require a state license. So are you suggesting that that might not be the case, that this might be a use that in your opinion or the applicant's opinion, it would not be subject to the state licensing requirement?
The board won't be surprised to learn that depending on whether or not the activity is conducted within what is considered a primary residence or outside of a primary residence makes it a difference in how these activities are defined. Similarly, so does the number of children that you have in your programs, and similarly, so does the age of the children. Then you get to add in additional caveats and qualifiers as relates to what kind of program you're actually running and whether the thing might be considered something akin to a special skill program like karate or what we might call rural residential skills or something else that might be developed, or if it falls into the category of a child care facility, great or small or some other definition. The applicant's intentions from the beginning, as you know, you guys work on in government, you can understand, has been to try to avoid whatever additional administrative burdens or hurdles they could, including licensing with the state. Because a lot more than just what we're talking about as far as property use or even property security or safety, go into that determination, right? They then start looking at, the qualifications of your employees and necessary background checks and medical records that need to be on hand for children. So a lot of other things, come into it. And so the applicant's intention from the beginning has been to attempt to avoid that state licensing if necessary, which is why, again, I would at least point to the definition in your ordinance that says whether licensed or not by the state. They may not be able to avoid it. They understand that. They're going to seek out additional counsel after we conclude this process to see whether or not there may be another avenue or another method by which they can conduct their activities that could avoid this sort of state licensing requirement. Long way of saying, so to speak, that they're applying as a child care facility. We agree that under the town ordinance, these activities fit into that use, and therefore we are asking for the real property rights to conduct those activities on these parcels. Whether or not those activities are going to rise to a level that the state of Maine and DHS say, yes, you must license this with us and provide X, Y, and Z, it's yet to be determined. It looks like it may be the case, but they hope still to maybe avoid that. What the applicant is certainly willing to do and say is that to the extent state licensing or approvals are necessary, they will provide proof of same and provide proof of compliance with those to the town, either as part of their ongoing normal operations or as part of the building permit and planning board application process.
So this is to follow up, so I'm not clear from your response on who would be or what would be making the determination of whether or not a state license was required.
Yeah, well, the state's going to make that determination.
Okay,
You know,
so you concur that, you would agree that not agree. You would say that the state is the one that makes that determination.
I mean, they're the governing body that determines whether or not, you know, an operation in operation or effect requires certain licensing or not. You know, certainly my client's intention is not to go out and find, you know, unnecessary liability or to, you know, break laws or rules that the state has put upon them. You know, so, you know, and again, it's a governing body that makes these choices, so I would agree. I'm kind of caveating and hemming and hawing here a little bit, only to say that you can't prove, it's sometimes difficult to prove a negative, right? And so I don't know if what, you know, the town might require at a later stage would be proof from the state, you know, unequivocally that licensing is not required, you know, or if it's just simply enough to know, you know, based on a legal opinion letter that's submitted, and then the town's further investigation through, you know, their code enforcement and discussions with the state, that you know that you know, they're running this correctly. I think it's normally how those sort of violations or failures pop up.
Can I go next?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I wrote some notes the other day, and next to it is a big question mark as to whether this board even has the authority to require any septic or state licensing information. So there's no standards for a daycare or childcare. So all there is a conditional use before us. So when we did those 6 points last time, unless I'm missing something, I think those 6 points are the only thing we can go by. We have to approve or look at. It was said last meeting that they have to go to the planning board if they get approval from us. So a lot of that will be taken care at that level. I just think that the septic, the state licensing issues are not part of our board. I mean, I just don't think they are. The 6 points that we went over, we tentatively approved each one. That was it, as far as I'm concerned.
Understand. But I think that's more of a discussion when we close the hearing and we have a discussion amongst ourselves, but I follow.
Okay, but my main point is, I don't think it should be part of the discussion.
A part of the hearing, or?
A part of our decision-making, the septic, I don't think it's part of the zoning board. If you look at the ordinance, it's not in the zoning board. It's in the ordinance, but it's not in the zoning board chapters. The parts about septic.
I think we'll talk about that as a whole.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant at this time? No? All right, thanks, Attorney Brown. Have a seat. I'm sure we might be calling you up again. I would love to hear from the code enforcement officer at this time, if you'll state your name for the record and take it from there, especially with regard to the memorandum we made making reference.
Sure, thank you. My name is Michael Demers. I'm the code enforcement officer, local plumbing inspector, town of Kennebunkport. The memorandum, in short, just deals with the consideration of acceptable soils for sanitary requirements. The applicant is requesting an expanded use, and with that, the state has requirements for daycares as to the number of children being taken care of and how you're going to provide for those sanitary requirements. And the burden is on the applicant to provide that to the permitting authority. And I understand that in this case, it's just you're approving the use. You're not approving, you know, those septic things. If it's a matter of going to the planning board, I think that the codes office would be comfortable with that. You know, it probably doesn't have to be dealt with tonight. So.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the code officer with regard to his memorandum?
Yeah, just back to the septic briefly, and maybe it doesn't fall under our purview, but since you're here, I'll ask. So my question was, you know, for the childcare that's in place currently, it's functioning, we're using portalets as the main sewage receptacles. Does that meet
I'm
our?
not sure that conforms to the plumbing rules of the state of Maine.
Yeah, and what about for our town, for the town? And I don't know if that follows under our 6 items there or not. There was something relative to septic in there, if I remember, wasn't there, sanitary?
Flooding or
Well,
something?
we can get into that once
But-
we close.
So my question is, does,
Porta potties can be used to supplement a use, but the suitable soils is really what because once you get approval for a specific use, you have to, again, a licensed site evaluator needs to design that system and show that the applicant can meet those sanitary requirements. So
it's the site use that drives that?
it's the proposed use that drives, in the site conditions, that would determine whether it would be a permittable use. As a ZBA, you can approve the proposed use, probably without considering the sanitary requirements, because there are, further boards that this applicant's
So like the
gotta
platform
run.
tents would be approved by the planning board, and they would look at that, is what I think I'm
Ultimately,
hearing.
a structure would be permitted by the codes office. The planning board would be more approving the conditional use and setting,
Okay.
conditions for that conditional use or special exception, how we word it.
Good.
Yeah, I think I'm-
So you were referencing that, not that it's governing here, but you think that maybe the proposed use with regard to the septic or sewerage matter needs to be, the state plumbing code is the governing law. Who enforces that?
I enforce it as the LPI, I enforce it. But again, it's up to the applicant to demonstrate that he can meet those requirements for number of gallons per day being,
So that review, while it's the state, so let's call it regulations, that you're the first level of review for that?
correct.
Okay. And so, in order for you to conduct such a review, you're saying
I need an application from a site evaluator
the
for the
HHE
proposed,
200?
for the proposed design.
Okay.
It's nothing I could design.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I just wanted to get that. And the town doesn't have its own separate regulations with regard to sewer septic. That's
No.
really, that's state.
Correct.
But you're the enforcement branch of that, or at least the first level of enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else for the code officer? No? Okay. We might call you back, though.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to speak this evening? Okay, nobody in the audience has identified themselves as wishing to speak. I'm prepared to, well, actually, do you want to say anything on the record before I close the public hearing?
No, I think certainly when you start making your findings, I think looking at those subsections closely to determine if the applicant has met those requirements, just let me know, because I am writing the finding of facts. I want to make sure I get everything for the record.
Yeah, very well. And your intention was to read those findings for us on the record this evening, right?
Yes.
The draft findings. Okay, great. Okay, then, with that, I'm gonna, at least for the moment, close the public hearing. But the board reserves the right to call back Attorney Braun or the applicants or the code enforcement officer. Okay, so with that, now we can begin our discussion. So we've bounced around this before. The two larger issues that seem to have been raised the last time and seem to be raised this time have to do with state licensing and also with I don't have a great caption for septic sewer sanitation, but we all know what I'm referring to there. So, Mark, you're making a point, your point was that this board should not be considering either of those? Is that what you were saying?
Correct. Yes.
And you were saying that we don't need to,
Well,
because neither
because-
of those fit in neatly into the 6-prong test for a conditional use?
We could go back through the 6 prongs.
We will go back, because we're gonna need to vote on
and
each of
see.
them. Yeah,
But my brief look the other day told me no. And it also told me that we should just kind of stay in our lane and just do what the zoning board has to do. Knowing that they'll be going to the planning board, they'll be up for review with the town, the state, maybe the federal government. So we're not the last level of approval here.
so those are found in section 9(2), you're making reference to 9(2)H.
H, A through F.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So my recollection was, well, F, so again, when we're talking about 9(2)H1, F, says will not result in significant flood hazard or flood damage, drainage problems, ground or surface water contamination or soil erosion. So you don't think a discussion with regard to septic or sewerage would come under the area of ground or surface water contamination?
I think it does.
Certainly, but I was going by the record of the last meeting where it was going to be porta potties. And unless porta potties leak, that's what I was going on, the record from last meeting.
Well, yeah, but we were just discussing in the last meeting, we were getting like a broad brushstroke. It was kind of like seeing where we stood. We've also received a bunch of additional information since that time, and we voted
Right.
to consider that
Right.
additional information for
Yeah,
our
I'm
purposes
open for
tonight.
discussion, for sure.
But do you, just staying with that, don't you think that septic, sewer, porta potty would be reflected in ground or surface water contamination? I don't see how it doesn't, but
Right.
you educate me
Again, I
on
was
that.
going on the porta potty thing from last week.
But even with the porta potty thing, you don't think that it has anything to do with that?
I was, in my limited knowledge of porta potties, I was going on that was presented by them at the last meeting.
Okay, so.
End of story.
So if the applicant, this is just us discussing, but if the applicant's proposing porta potty, and in fact, the applicant's been using porta potty, and in fact, the use has been going on for a while, I think. Has the use has been going on for a period of time, right?
That's correct.
How long has the use been going on?
I don't want to speculate.
Just come up to the microphone.
I don't want to speculate, but I'll simply say for at least a school season.
All right, well, maybe the applicant, one of the principals of the applicant, just a simple question, but please come up to the microphone. How long has the use been going on?
Approximately 18 months.
Thank you. So the applicant is using a porta potty. And since the last meeting, it's come up that that might not be appropriate.
Right.
So are you suggesting that we ignore that? That it might
Well,
not be appropriate?
If I remember from the minutes, we went through these 6.
Yes, but we have all
And
this
we-
additional information now.
We went through the 6, and we looked at each one, and we all voted unanimously that they were tentatively okay, based on the porta potty. That's all I'm saying. Now we have extra information, which I barely got a chance to read, like this morning.
Then do you want to post?
So the extra information was a letter from the town code enforcement officer asking for a form. That's the information, extra information we got. I was just as confused as you.
Yeah, I was trying to read
So,
through it to
yeah, exactly.
understand what.
So I'm going by, at the last meeting, we okayed all 6 of these.
Well, first, we didn't okay it. Again, I
We-
want to be on the record. We were doing a
We
broad
went-
brushstroke
Yeah.
talk about it,
Right.
and since that time, we've
So
got a
when we
lot
got
of
to F,
additional.
when we got to F, you asked, does anybody have a problem with F? We read it, and no one, we all said, okay.
Well, we were also told at the
Okay,
hearing,
so
no,
we're
but we
going
were
around in
told,
circles.
we were told at the hearing that no
It met-
state license was
met
required.
requirements.
Right.
That was stated by the applicant, that no state license was required. And that might not be correct. So we have a,
Right.
I'm not saying it is
Right.
incorrect. I'm just saying we have a much broader amount of information partly on that
We'll agree to
point.
disagree.
Huh?
We'll agree to disagree.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
Well,
Please.
yeah, it, to me, it almost feels like we have a chicken and an egg problem here.
Make sure you speak into the microphone,
Oh,
please.
sorry. It feels a bit to me like a chicken and an egg problem here, as to whether,
Yeah.
you know, because I agree that ground or surface water contamination can include issues about sanitary issues. And we were going on the basis that initially, was initially submitted that the porta potties were appropriate for the nature of the business that was being conducted there. Now, it seems as though, again, there may not be that case, but that's dependent perhaps on whether or not licensing is required, because as I understood from what was submitted to us, a copy of the memo about the state child care licensing requirements, that by itself, if it's applicable to you, would in fact require something more than porta potties. Possibly, well, okay. I didn't read every, but I did base it on that. So it's confusing here. To me, it seems, and I know that there are obviously going to be additional town boards involved. At least one. And whether it's their purview to look at this, or whether our purview to look at this and say, okay, there's enough, not confusion, but potential for a different outcome, that if we made it conditional on, there would be further revisiting of this, if in fact they needed to meet state licensing requirements, if that changed the picture. I guess one other question, and maybe again, I'm not quite sure I understood. Just if it is not concluded, like right now where we don't have an answer as to whether or not state licensing as a child care facility is required, and the additional requirements for sanitary situations there would have to be met. But assuming that's not the case, is what I understood from the code enforcement officer, there still needs to be, just because there still needs to be certain and
Okay.
further, this is where I'm a little confused.
Okay, you're saying, I think, that we don't know if state licensing is going to be required or not.
Correct.
And we're not going to determine that today.
Correct.
We're not,
Right.
that's not within our purview to decide if state
Correct.
licensing is required, or if state licensing is not required. That's not
Right.
our determination. But you're saying, did the code enforcement officer just advise us that regardless of that issue,
Yeah, that's one
that because
question.
there's a change of use of the subject property, that an HHE 200 and meeting certain standards is required?
Yeah, I think that's one of my questions. Is that the case simply because the use of this previously undeveloped and basically unused properties is now going to have a specific use on it? I don't think,
Okay.
yeah, does that,
No, I like the question. I'm going to ask if we could have the code officer to come up again. And I think, what the board would like to know is, putting aside the issue of whether or not a state license is required, is the review that is discussed as necessary in your memorandum still necessary whether or not state licensure is required, because it's a change of use either way?
Correct. The burden is on the applicant for the proposed use. They have to show that the local authority, whether it be the zoning board or the planning board, or definitely the building codes department, that they can meet the sanitary requirements. And that would require an HHE 200, designed by a licensed site evaluator.
What triggers that necessity is simply a change of use on the property. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's a state licensing requirement.
Regardless, whether the daycare facility is, or childcare is recognized or licensed by the state, I would still need that HHE 200.
Thank you. Okay. Did that answer your question, Kate?
Yeah, that makes it a little clearer, yeah.
Do you have any questions this evening? He does not seem to, okay. And do you have anything to opine on this? Do you want to throw anything out into the discussion, particularly with regard to the issue of the sanitation issue we're talking about, or the state licensing issue that we're talking about?
The only thing that I would comment on relative to sanitation is that I understood that the activities of the intended activities were going to be taking place on a series of lots owned by the applicants that had already been approved under the 2006 regulations for sanitation. They have complete septic, leach fields, etc. So they are already approved. I didn't realize there would be additional approval necessary for the town.
That's what the code enforcement officer said, right.
I didn't realize there was going to be additional responsibility if they use that for that purpose. The porta potties aside.
Right, I mean, it's a gray area, I give you that, but it's, well, not a gray area, but our ability to be decisive is a little limited.
Yeah, the language was, it led me to understand that if these properties were already approved, that there was not additional approval necessary.
Are you talking about right now, or are you talking about when we had this hearing earlier, the initial part of the hearing, or both?
Both.
Well, but the code officer just said that the sanitation facilities that existed were for a use at the time, that this is my understanding of what he said, that the sanitation approval that was given years ago was for the use that was established years ago, and that this is the introduction of the new use, and the new use triggers a review.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alan, when you say that had been previously approved, was that not for a septic system that's associated with the residence that exists on one of the parcels, on which certain amounts of the school or childcare activities may take place? But the approval that was given was for basically a residential house.
Yes.
Right.
And I think then we now have a different, as the code enforcement officer, we now have a completely different or additional use. So that, and, you know, I agree with Mark, but disagree too. I think that there is in that language some level at least of not us necessarily looking into all the details at this point, but at least perhaps including a condition that says that requirements that are imposed by other boards or looked at by other boards who may be more appropriately be the people looking at the details of it than we are, would be an appropriate condition to put in the conditional use, or however we define that.
Hence, we are not here to ascribe requirements, just the use.
Mhm.
So that's where I am.
Good.
Right, on what you were just saying, and what Mark, you seem to be shaking your head up and down, which was an affirmative.
Yes.
I mean, any approval that we give, the applicant would need to get all the necessary approvals from whoever else is appropriate to grant or deny those approvals. And since we wouldn't give an approval without assuming that all other appropriate approvals would be obtained. Like, we wouldn't approve something that we knew was gonna run afoul of the law.
Right.
So, if, are you opposed, this is stepping ahead a little bit, but are you opposed a condition that,
Oh, no,
that
that's
narrowed
what I
down
want.
and discussed sanitation
That's what I would like, that.
and discussed state licensure and said, if those are, if it's determined, you know, you need to
That's-
satisfy those to whatever degree they
That's-
need to be satisfied as determined by those bodies.
Yes, I don't think we have to sit here and look at I've looked at these things, I don't understand the soils and the septic. I don't think we should get that before the next meeting and analyze it and okay it before we.
Oh, we don't do that, that's not us.
So I think a condition of the conditional use would be appropriate.
Oh, great,
I-
okay,
I
we're
just
on the
don't
same
think-
page.
Yeah. And then state licensing has been mentioned. I think the town wanted us to put a condition for state licensing, but they weren't referring to the sanitation or septic. I think the town was referring to just a basic old license to have one. And I think that's just a given, that we don't necessarily have to put in as a condition. I think that's just a given, that they have to get a license.
But if it's a given, then what would the harm be in
There
including
wouldn't
it
be
as a
harm,
condition?
but what would be the benefit? If it's-
To ensure that the use ultimately was
okay,
complying
okay.
with all
I'm just-
authorities.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think, Mark, if there was a condition that they must determine whether licensing is required and then get it if it is, that makes a difference, flips back to a difference
Yeah.
in the sanitation issues, because as we understand it, the state licensing requirements, as Galen or somebody pointed out to us, would then require something beyond porta potties, which then opens up, not for us to determine, but for somebody then to have to take a look, step back and go looking at the sanitation issue again. So it's kind of, like I said, it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some things will trigger some things, whatever, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't put a condition that says you have to comply with whatever licensing requirements. Not saying
So-
we're gonna decide.
Does
So
it-
the
we're
email
not-
we got from the code enforcer asking for the septic design maybe could have been.
That's not asking that
Maybe-
we review a septic design.
I read it as
That's not.
that they should submit one.
To him,
So,
not to us.
right. I read it as they should submit it to us tonight or the next meeting, or, I mean, it was a confusing.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand it, but after he explained it, I
Well,
did.
could you please come up just to the microphone for 1 second? Your memorandum is your memorandum suggesting that this board conduct a review of a soils application, an HHE 200?
Only that the applicant can demonstrate that he can meet the sanitary requirements. And he could demonstrate that he could meet that,
But that determination is made by you.
would be made by a site evaluator.
Okay,
And the
great.
site evaluator would give this board documentation or the applicant.
Yes, I just-
and the
Doesn't that
applicant
have to go to you? Don't
It
you have to sign off
eventually
on an
will
A?
go to me for permitting, correct.
Okay,
But just for the demonstration that the applicant can,
understood.
okay.
Okay. I don't, Mark, my view of that is that we don't want to see,
So
I don't want to see an HHE 200.
I recommend the board require the applicant to submit an HHE 200 prepared by a licensed site evaluator. I read that as we have to look at it, we have to,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We're not gonna look at an
That's-
HHG.
that was my
We're
original
not
point, Mr.
competent.
Cadigan.
Yeah, we're not competent.
that was my original point,
Yeah,
20 minutes ago.
then I love your original.
Okay.
Okay, other thoughts? No.
I guess I'd want to listen possibly to what conditions we might,
Well, we'll go
That's
through, I
because
haven't,
my-
so I want, I
Yeah, I-
want to know, you guys just said that, two of you just said, you haven't had, we did receive a bunch of these materials today,
yeah.
July
Yes.
13th, and we just voted earlier that we would accept them, make them a part of the record,
Right.
and use them to guide, as elements of our review process. And then two of you all said you haven't reviewed
Barely.
it on the record. So I'm uncomfortable with that.
Maybe we should be stricter about getting things in on time.
Well, we have the regulation. Would you like to revisit the vote? I mean, to me, I completely agree that the materials came in super late. And I think it was not intentional on any party. I think it's just
July 4th
a
weekend.
reflection of circumstances.
Yeah.
That's all. I don't think there was any
Yeah, no.
other reason for it. But if we don't, if you haven't had materials reviewed, do you want time to review the materials further? That's my question. I reviewed all the materials, so I'm comfortable myself.
I think,
Do you want to?
I think I'm okay. I mean, we got the one from the
Yeah.
attorney this morning, and I reviewed it this afternoon.
Okay.
It wasn't
uh,
time efficient tonight, but
what did we
I
get
got
this
the
morning?
information.
This,
You're comfortable?
Is this
Alan,
what
are
we
you
got this
comfortable with
morning?
the,
is this what we
the
got? I
opportunity
didn't
to
get
be
it.
satisfied with the review of the materials?
Yes.
That's what I
Okay.
thought.
Jim
That's what I
read
thought.
everything today.
I'm pretty good about keeping on.
And I've read everything in more than a skim fashion, but I had a lot of time today.
I didn't.
All right, so then I'll put that minor issue of mine aside there. So before we go to any draft findings of fact, I'd like to go back to review 9-2H1 through A through F, and anything else under 9-2H that we need to. So if everybody could go to that.
Before we go through that, one of the actions from the last time was to send out the additional letters to the butters, right?
Oh, that's right, yes.
And I'm not talking in the microphone. And so that occurred, and I think I heard we went to 7, maybe additional butters. And just for the record, we haven't received anything back from any additional butters, is
Well, we
that
have
right?
one
Except the
present
Oh, well, except for
Yeah.
gentleman who
the
was
gentleman
here
who
earlier.
came, but nothing beyond that.
But which makes me want to ask a question of, is the town satisfied that all the butters were identified and that they were all properly noticed?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, so that answers that. That was one of the
No,
open
it's good.
action items from the last
I'm
meeting.
glad we
right?
put that on the record.
Okay.
So if everybody would bring up any view if you have, I'll read them all, but if you have them going to
Cheating through.
9-2H1,
Where's my copy?
2 I think is inapplicable. Galen, are we certain that the property is not located, none of the properties are located in a shoreline zone or a not resource protection zone?
Let me just double check, but I don't believe they are. Nope.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay, so that is, I was jumping ahead to 92H2, which talks about, in addition, when the proposed use is to be located in a shoreline zone or resource protection zone, then we have some other items to deal with, but we've been advised that it's not in those zones, so we can ignore, well, not ignore, but 9-2H2 is inapplicable. So that brings us back to 9-2H1. So the preamble is, Conditional uses subject to zoning board of appeals review under Article 4 may be approved by the zoning board of appeals after considering the characteristics and location of the proposed use and of other properties in the surrounding neighborhood, provided that the petitioner shall submit to the zoning board of appeals statements in writing, which may be accompanied by diagrams and photographs, which shall become part of the record of such petitions demonstrating that the proposed use, and now we have A through F, and this time we'll go through these, we'll have any discussion that's necessary, and then we can vote if we think it meets it or not. All right? Am I good? Everybody good with that?
Good.
All right, A, so now we're talking about the proposed use. Will meet the definition and specific requirements set forth in this chapter for such particular use. So I believe that there are no specific requirements set forth in this chapter for a child care center, but there is
So,
a definition.
yeah, I was gonna say, do we go to the definition?
Yeah, we do go to the definition, because we have to believe that it meets the definition. So under section, we're all under the code 240, and this is section 2.2, is where we find the definition of child care center, and it is as follows. An establishment providing daycare for 5 or more children under the age of 16, which charges for the care of children, whether in a private home or separate establishment, and whether or not licensed by the state of Maine. So I believe it's been represented that this is for the daycare for 5 or more children, and that they are all under the age of 16, and that there is a payment required, and it's either in a private home or a separate establishment. And that definition is not dependent upon whether or not it's a licensed facility. In other words, it doesn't, I read this definition to say it could be a licensed facility, it could be not a licensed facility. Both have to meet the rest of these terms.
Yes, agreed.
So is everybody comfortable that this meets that definition?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
Okay, so I'll take a vote afterwards when we review all, unless we have some disagreement, then we'll go back and vote on them one by one. Is that agreeable? Are all former chairs agreeable to that structure? Okay.
Hey, Paul?
Yep.
I had one other question, and this is kind of going on a tangent a little bit, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There is also a definition for school, so are we considering this child care center or school?
It's a child care center.
It is,
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Before we go on,
Yes,
should we add to A, the fact that the farm and forest zone permits a child care center?
I think we shouldn't put it in here, but I think it should be in the findings of fact.
Oh, yeah, definitely, but, okay.
Because I don't want to, B, will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibration, fumes, odor, dust, light, glare, or other cause. From the information we've been provided, does anybody have a thought on this? Am I to interpret that
I
no
think I'm good
comment
on
is,
I
that
think I'm
you're
good.
comfortable with
Yes,
it?
we're comfortable with it. I'm
Okay.
comfortable with it.
I take it you're comfortable, Alan? Yes. So we had one abutter that spoke, because he's an abutting property, and the issues that were raised by the abutter were, we're making sure that any wood stove in any structure would be up to code, and I believe that comes under the jurisdiction of the planning board or the code enforcement office.
It's a safety concern. It was a safety concern.
Yeah, and
It
then,
wasn't one of these other.
and then he questioned about pedestrian usage, and then the one that he made reference to, because where it does say, or other cause, and he had an issue with a concern that maybe the use might stray over the boundaries of the properties which the applicant is proposing to use onto that abutter's property. But that's just not an anticipation that it will, just wanted some assurance that it wouldn't. Then I would presume that we're only giving approval for the properties before us, not any
Correct.
adjacent property. So I think that answers it.
That would be a universal concern for any
Yes, I agree,
type of approval that we would have.
yes.
It might spill over onto someone else's property.
But that wouldn't be, we are not authorizing that.
Right.
Okay, C, will not have a significant adverse effect on adjacent or nearby property values. Nothing has been presented to us that it would.
Right.
And we're free to make our own determination without that necessarily being provided, but I don't necessarily see anything there. Anybody?
Agreed.
No?
Alan? Good. D, will not result in significant hazards to pedestrians or vehicular traffic or significant traffic congestion. So I think it was in, maybe I'm wrong, I thought it was in the initial presentation that the hours of operation, where they would be drop off and pick up, were not in the heart of like business traffic, you know, going to work, coming back from work. Was that presented to us by
Yes, I think, I
the
remember that.
applicant, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that the person who stood up, the abutter, referred to some truck traffic, et cetera, and I didn't think that had any, it wasn't coming from this property or part of these activities.
Well, there
So
is truck traffic on the property, in the area by
The
one
area
of the
you referred to.
applicants, or two of the applicants' businesses, that were
Maybe
out of
that's
the,
what he was referring to, I didn't
Hey, so maybe we
recognize
can
that.
ask
Okay.
yeah.
the applicant on that one. So I know you're back on the property that you have there, and you do have some,
Do you want Tim to respond to this? or
some
do you
business-related traffic back there. Is it close to or in the same area that you're going to have these activities?
Yep, I run Spang Builders out of there.
want- And Hazelwood.
But relative to the, the concern he brought up about, the children, walking, where there's, a great deal of traffic. Can you address that piece of it?
No, there's not a great deal of traffic, and any traffic goes under 10 miles an hour.
Okay.
It's
And-
very, very well controlled.
Do
It's
they
my,
u-
it's
do
my
they-
backyard.
Do they use the same, Tim, do they use the same access? I don't mean when children are coming in to be dropped off or children are being picked up. I mean when there are activities going on and the children are moving from A to B. Do they use the road that vehicles use as well?
They cross a dirt road.
So they just go across it, they don't use it to traverse back and forth?
Nope.
Okay. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is really asking whether the childcare and the activities there are going to result in not so much the other businesses' activities, so I think we're fine on that.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
We expanded off that,
Yeah.
I agree with you, you're right. I'm good with this, you good?
Yeah.
Everybody good?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Good. Will not result in significant fire danger.
Well, that was certainly something the abutter was questioning in regard to the wood stoves.
Yeah,
And yes, I can I mean, I know you've said these are very carefully designed and carefully installed, and they've been in existence in other locations and worked well. So, but it is,
Hi, it's Tim Spang. We're gonna have to get a building permit.
okay,
And we're gonna have to do to all the codes for the town, just like everybody else does.
okay.
Perfect.
and I happen to do that for the last 42 years, so I hope to do it well.
So that's gonna be something that comes under the purview of the code enforcement
Okay.
officer?
Perfect,
And the code enforcement officer is shaking his head yes, for the record.
perfect.
And that would be the only fire danger that I've
Yeah.
seen any hint at there. Okay, and then the last one, F, will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage, drainage problems, ground or subsurface water contamination or soil erosion. Let's break this down into subparts if we may. Does anybody have a concern about the use, creating a significant flood hazard or flood damage?
No.
No.
No. Does anybody have a concern about the use resulting in significant drainage problem?
No.
Paul knows. Does anybody have any concern with regard to the use causing significant ground or subsurface water contamination? Maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
That was the whole discussion
Yeah.
around the
That's the
porta
whole
potties
discussion.
and the,
Um,
whatever that document is.
But- but
H200 or
I
whatever.
think that comes under our purview, but I also think that if we have a condition
Yeah.
that says that everything has to be this wouldn't be the condition, but if everything has to be satisfactory to every governing authority that has anything to do with that, and that's a condition of our approval,
Yeah.
I would be comfortable.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with that.
Are you comfortable with that? Yes. And then the last one was, or soil erosion.
No.
I
No problem.
don't see soil erosion. The only one that I saw relevant was the, okay. So, let's start by, before, I think that we've agreed that, we're gonna have some form or fashion of a condition relative to getting all the appropriate approvals for their sanitation. And that's not something that this board decides upon, but we can make our decision contingent upon that condition being met. Is everybody good with language like that?
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay, so we'll craft the language after, so with that, and to reiterate again, 92H2, we've established as not applicable. Everybody agree with that? Kate, you look, no.
Which is H2.
That was-
Myself what that was.
That's the one that says if it is in the resource protection.
Oh, fine.
not in
Or
the-
if
it's
it
not in
is in shoreland,
Yes,
and we've
sorry.
got a affirmation that it's not.
That's fine.
Okay, super good. So I would entertain the motion that subject to any, let me pause for a minute. I think that we've agreed that we may impose a condition on meeting any licensing requirement that might be required by law. Is there anybody that disagrees with that? We've worded differently, but does anybody disagree with that?
I'm on board with that,
You
yes.
good? You
Makes
good?
sense.
Alan, you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll fashion that language later, so I would say, could I have a motion that the applicant's proposal with regard to the properties the applicant has the authority to use, meets the conditions of Chapter 240, Section 9.2H1A through F, subject to conditions we will impose with regard to sanitation and licensure if it's required.
So moved.
So
Second.
we need to clarify that. So there's two provisions I would like you to consider for the conditions. So we agree on the applicable state law, federal, all that stuff is,
With regard to,
that's one of the conditions. You need, usually when you did home occupations, it was just a letter This is actually a findings of fact that's going to be submitted and recorded with the Registry of Deeds.
Yes.
So we normally put a boilerplate condition that says the approval must be recorded with the Registry of Deeds within 90 days of approval, or it becomes null and void unless it gets an extension from the board. So that's a condition that we normally put on findings of fact that gets submitted with the registry. Talking to the attorney.
Which attorney?
Huh?
Attorney Bond?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking with the attorney, he was a little concerned with just leaving it open-ended regarding building permits being issued. They won't be issued until state licensure, so the way I drafted the condition is demonstration of compliance with relevant and necessary state DHHS, OCFS, child care licensing requirements prior to the issuance of building permits. I think I had that correct from his email to staff.
Read it again.
Demonstration of compliance with relevant and necessary state DHHS, OCFS, child care licensing requirements prior to the issuance of building permits. That's the,
Got a little lost in the alphabet soup.
it's the two agencies that are in charge of the child care.
Okay, so this is basically talking only to childcare licensing requirements.
Yes.
Are we talking about any other either
Well-
code enforcement or something like that? It's something that is being looked at further by the planning board?
Well, the only other one that I had here as a condition was the applicant shall obtain approval from the planning board for parking layout and approval under Article 10 site plan approval process. And I did not know if you wanted me to mention that you believe that's the correct reviewing authority for sanitation facilities or not. That's-
Well, I don't think that we determine who the appropriate reviewing authority is for sanitation facilities. I'd kind of like it to be broader that, to the extent it's either the code enforcement office, in the code office's capacity as the plumbing inspector, or state regulation. But I don't think that the board, I don't think, am I speaking for you guys, but I don't think we want to be in position to say who makes that determination.
No.
I think we just want to make sure that it meets all governing law.
I do think you need to offer clarity
Wouldn't that be nice here?
Yes, it would. Because I don't want this to come down to, not that I think the applicant's going to say this, but they're going to say, well, the ZBA was fine with it. You know, they didn't have a problem with the wastewater. They were the ones that reviewed it. I think there should just be clarity on who,
The authority is.
yes.
So who is that authority?
Because I think you were all agreeing that you're not in that.
We're not that
review.
authority.
Correct. But that language of that subsection F could lead to someone to imply that you did review it for.
No, we want subsection F to be subject to condition, and the condition is that we want, if I speak for you, is that we want the appropriate approval for all sanitation facilities from the town plumbing inspector and the planning board, because it's not under their purview, and then any other state entity that would be required.
So I have the applicant shall obtain approval from the planning board for parking layout and approval under Article 10 site plan approval process and meet sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities by the local plumbing inspector.
And, well, it's also the planning board though, right?
They will review it, yes.
So I want them to be linked to that, and I want, a little lost on precisely whether or not the applicant needs to get state approval. My opinion doesn't really matter as to whether or not they do. I think they probably do, but I just want to make sure that the sanitation is approved by all parties necessary to approve it. And I know the code officer in his capacity as plumbing is one, and I know that the planning board in its capacity is two, and I am unsure if there's any other approval that the state requires on that issue.
Right.
Do you happen to know with definitiveness?
We did talk to the state, and they did say that there is a review for proposed licensed facilities. So there is some review from them as well, but that's to be determined.
Then can we add that in, if applicable, when it comes to the sanitation issue?
But we can put that in there as if applicable, if that's what you,
That'd be wonderful.
Mr. Chair?
1 second, please.
okay. You want me to try to read it? I'm gonna try to, I might have to like rework this again. The applicant shall obtain approval by the planning board for parking layout and approval under Article 10, site plan approval process, and meet sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities by the local plumbing inspector, planning board, and by state agencies if applicable.
Yeah, just read that one more time, the sanitation aspect of it.
And meet sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities.
Requirements, it doesn't requirement have to be there somewhere.
Sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities requirement by the local plumbing inspector, planning board, and by state agencies if applicable.
Everybody?
Essentially, we don't care about the licensing, really. That's not our purview, except it may affect
Well-
the sanitation issue.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's a separate condition of ours. We're gonna put that condition in.
Okay, I'm trying to me, the state licensing for childcare licensing as a licensed childcare facility is to some extent, since the town.
If determined necessary by the state.
Yeah, but we only care if it's, I think, if it is because it affects the sanitation requirements.
I don't think
Sure,
just,
I know what you're saying,
Yeah,
based on the things we went through.
yes.
Well, you could also probably include
It won't hurt to
the
have it, but I
fire.
know
Yeah.
You
I
could-
understand what you're
could
saying, but
include the fire
I
safety
think it
as well.
hurts to
Well,
say they get approvals that they need.
If the applicant doesn't mind including a condition that, they will investigate state licensing requirements,
They-
fine
they-
by me, but to me, the reason we're mostly concerned about that is because from the local standpoint is whether it affects the sanitation requirements.
We don't need their approval for the condition, but,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have something specific there that, separately, that had to do with the state licensing, or was that folded into the last?
We had the general one that says the applicant will abide by all federal, state, and local laws and regulations that are applicable to the conditional use of the child care center.
All good? Good?
Say that one more time.
Say
Sorry.
it again.
Yeah, please.
Applicant will abide by all federal, state, and local laws and regulations that are applicable to the conditional use of a child care center.
Okay. You seem to want to offer something, Counsel?
I still think that those restrictions are a little too tight for our purposes, not trying to avoid anything. Honestly, I'm just trying to avoid any complications or the suggestion of requirements or restrictions where, in the future, where they wouldn't otherwise just simply be, null and void or not required because of the specific circumstances. I like for language, applicant will abide by all appropriate federal or all relevant federal, state, and local laws and regulations, and just leave it at that. I get concerned when we start talking about listing the plumbing inspector or planning board and then the state as well, and naming out all the agencies and the possible things that we could come up with. That's sort of where I start to get concerned. But if we're talking about like just a broad acknowledgement and agreement that that the applicant will abide by all relevant federal, state, local laws and regulations, that's boilerplate. We include a statement like that in just about everything. Of course, they approve and agree to that.
Who's we?
Well, the applicant.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I like how this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was good with what I just heard there. I mean, I'm gonna ask you a question. What closed loops all this in terms of, ensuring that it happens and the timing and
Yeah, so I think the next step,
when you give a conditional use, excuse me.
you know,
Yeah.
certainly once they have the conditional use and they record it, their next step would be to go in front of the planning board. Because regardless of whatever they decide to do for use-wise, they are doing something about parking, which would be under the purview of the planning board. I don't believe that the state is going to approve anything until they get all their local municipal approvals. So what I do foresee happening is that the planning board is going to have to take action before they get a complete application to go in front of the state. That's just feedback I've heard from the state agency when we spoke to them about this application. They said they would like to see all local approvals before they
So
get
it's,
state approval.
it's the chicken and egg thing
Yes.
again. Yep.
And normally what happens, this is not an uncommon thing, the planning board deals with this all the time. We normally approve an application pending Maine DEP approval, or other state agency, whatever it is, because we know that they're the ones that, you know, certainly have another review process involved. So we're not usually the holdup in the review process, it's usually the state. They take a lot longer time to review things and approve things, but that's what I would foresee as the next steps. But certainly the attorney can provide more information about his client's intention.
Well, I think we're good.
Sorry?
I think you could sit down.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we were, I'm fine with what you just read out 2 times that we,
Do you want me to project it on the screen? I can ask Dave to, if that's,
does anybody need to see that projected on the
No,
screen?
but I could hear it again. I could hear it again.
If we just
I-
hear it one more time.
One more time if you'd read it, please. Both of the conditions.
all the conditions. So the zoning board of appeals place the following conditions on the child care center use before approval. Applicant will abide by all federal, state, and local laws and regulations that are applicable to the conditional use of the child care center. The approval must be recorded with the registry of deeds within 90 days of approval, or it becomes null and void unless an extension is granted by the board in writing. Number 3, demonstration of compliance with relevant and necessary state DHHS OCFS child care licensing requirements prior to the issuance of building permits if applicable. The applicant shall obtain approval by the planning board for parking layout and approval under Article 10, site plan approval process, and meet sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities requirement by the local plumbing inspector, planning board, and by applicable state agencies. I'm leaving it pretty broad with the state agencies.
Okay.
This,
I don't think our
I know council
applicant is.
submitted the word abide. Is that the word that you have used that before? It's in the first condition.
Yes, that's the one we use standard for
Perfect.
planning board.
So that's your line.
That is for the first. Again, I want to speak out with a little bit of concern about that last lengthy statement where we're listing out the plumbing inspector and whatnot. If we can read that one more time, potentially on you know, out in the open here so they can hear it, and maybe we can just confirm what the final back end of it is. My biggest concern is I just want to make sure that we are including sufficient where applicable language to that last restriction. If the board is of opinion that they want that in, that they're going to list out all of those entities, I just want to make sure that it is still written in such a way that it doesn't require any unnecessary requirements, or it doesn't allow, say, a third party to create some obligation that may not otherwise be necessary.
The language does say, though, we end it with if applicable.
Well, we did with the first one.
Well, the second one, that,
So you're saying that your client is not going to go to planning board approval for?
Of course we are.
and
And you're saying that when they get their building permit, they're
Can you
not
read
going?
it again for me, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
The applicant shall obtain approval by the planning board for parking layout and approval under Article 10, site plan approval process, and meet sanitary and wastewater disposal facilities requirement by the local plumbing inspector, planning board, and by applicable state agencies.
So it doesn't say where applicable, it just says that we're going to do all of the things that those boards say to do. but we don't know that we're going to agree with what the code enforcement officer might ask us to do outside of a planning board purview. And we don't know what else any of those other entities may or may not require on their own. So we're agreeing to do anything that may be applicable and part of this process, but I'm just arguing that as written, that creates a broader definition and ostensibly a broader obligation.
But if you feel that if you feel you go before the planning board and you are dissatisfied with their decision, or if you go before the code enforcement officer in his capacity as code enforcement officer or plumbing inspector, and you're dissatisfied with that, any decision, then you have the right to appeal. I mean, you always have a mechanism there. That's something we can't anticipate.
That's true, but I guess it comes back to then a question of what was the intention or mandatory action from that language. Look, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, and I'm not going to. If I'm not articulating it any better than I can, then so be it. We are where we are. But I will just stand on my argument and position that I think as listed, there creates a potential for obligation that wouldn't otherwise exist. And you're right that a mechanism for appeal does exist. That means that we'll come back here to this board to consider whether or not the actions of a third party, were something that this board made a requirement of the conditional use.
And not all of those come back to the board.
Correct. So, and I'm just looking to avoid that, again, by making it as broad as simply say, without trying to identify with any more specificity than necessary, right, what governing bodies or decision makers there might be, so that, again, just as broad as possible, say we're going to comply with everything, but the more definition or detail you put in with identifying specific individuals or specific actions or processes, my concern is that's just going to create the appearance or the potential for, again, unintended consequences.
Okay. Thank you, counsel.
I have a question for you. The idea is that you will go seek approvals.
Correct.
For all those. That's all this is saying. It's not anticipating that there are going to be issues, as he just said.
Well, no, you're right, it doesn't anticipate
No.
it. But I guess that's part of my job maybe, is to maybe anticipate where there could be arguments or disagreements about what the approval says or means.
You still have to go there, though.
Well, that's correct.
That's all this is. That's all this is pointing out. That's it.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Is everybody ready to proceed, or does that?
Yep.
Mark?
Yeah. What's your question?
May I proceed?
I like his first sentence. I would be okay with that, but I'm also okay with all of the conditions. I would lean toward his very first sentence of the conditions.
I like them. Well, we're going to have that all read to us, and then we're going to vote yes or no on it.
Right.
So right now, what I was going to ask for is that I would entertain a motion that we approve the application and that let me rephrase that. I'd ask for a motion that this board votes that the applicant's proposal meets the conditions for conditional use identified in Chapter 240, Section 9.2H, 1A through F, subject to the conditions that the board imposes in its findings of fact.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Okay, discussion.
I just wanted to clarify that, kind of like what you were saying, any conditions we impose should probably be connected to A through F. But again, I'm okay with more conditions if the majority of the board wants that. I'll defer.
Okay. So, further discussion? Motion is on the table and seconded. I'd like, will you vote a hand and a vocal as well? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. So that motion passed. So now let us move to the findings of fact, unless there's something else.
Do you want me to read the findings of fact? Are you
Would
ready?
Do you want to put them up? Or do you want us to, read them to us and put them up at the same time? Is that better?
If you can put it up while
What would you like to do?
I'll read them, but I need to get them.
Say again?
I'll read them, but I want to make sure they're up on the.
Perfect.
Just let me into the Zoom.
Huh?
It's going to be here.
Yes.
Well, I need to move.
Okay, Dave, I'm sharing my screen. And feel free to let me know to make any corrections along the way, because I know this is, a lot of information was given to us. I want to make sure it's all correct, so. The Zoning Board of Appeals findings of fact decision. The applicant was Spangland Farms LLC. The property location was map 14, block 2, lots 5, 11A, 18, 39, 39A, and 39B. Zoning district is farm and forest zone. Conditional use application is the application type. Project summary. The property is used as a single-family residence, and the applicant seeks a conditional use for a child care center, which is primarily Crooked Pines School is a nature-based outdoor educational program enrolling children younger than the age of 16 with a maximum enrollment for the 2026 and 2027 year of 18 children. Instruction is conducted predominantly outdoors on a wooded and field portions of the holding, with a small sheltered classroom area and on-site sanitary facilities, garden and farm areas, and walking paths. Structures comprised of 2 20 by 24 wooden platforms on which 16 by 20 tent will be placed on each. The procedural history. The application was submitted on May 1st of 2026. The date of the initial application was June 22nd of 2026. The dates of the public hearings were June 22nd of 2026 and July 13th of 2026. There was no site visit and a decision date of July 13th of 2026. The documents submitted for review include a cover letter dated 6/1/2026 explaining the project, a checklist of the application materials. This should be Zoning Board of Appeals. Agent's authorization letter for Timothy Spang and Louise Spang. Completion plan of land by JLL Professional Services dated 6/2022.
Can I stop you?
Yep.
The authorization letters is broader than Tim and Louise.
Yes, I have the second one in the, that was the first document we received, so you'll see the second one in the next bullet points down.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
Gentlemen, what do you mean by that date?
That was the date on the site plan that you received,
That
It's
has
not
to
a
do
date.
with when it first came in.
06/2022.
Missing a date.
It's a month, okay.
The 200-foot abutters list from the town GIS for parcels 14-2-39, 14-2, 39A, 14-2, 39B, 14.2, 11A, and 14.2.5. We received a response letter on 6/22/2026 by Attorney Gregory Braun to the corrections report, a response on June 25th of 2026 from Attorney Braun for the first Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. There was a response letter dated July 13th of 2026 by Attorney Braun for amendment of the application and continued hearing. There was a response dated 7/13/2026 by Attorney Braun for response to section 240-6.3 email dated 7/1/26. We received the following deeds: a quitclaim deed recorded October 1st of 25, book 19754, page 449. Next deed was October 1st of 25, book 19754, page 391. Warranty deed recorded on 6/14/2019, book 17972, page 896. Warranty deed recorded on September 12th of 2024, book 19510, page 801. We received an area map showing the property location, a tax map of the property for 14.239A, 14.239, 14.239B. There was a statement regarding the sanitary facilities. Memos from town staff were dated 6/17/2026 and 7/10/2026. The State of Maine Child Care Facility Licensing Rules Code 10-148, Chapter 32, dated September 27th of 2021. Authorization of representation of owners and consent for agent as amended on 7/13/2026. Findings of fact. Right title and interest. The applicant demonstrated a legal interest of the property by submitting the following warranty and quitclaim deeds from the recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds. I'm not going to say them again because I already said them. The property is located at 20 Granite Heights Road in the Farm and Forest Zone District, identified by multiple parcels, including the Assessor's Tax Maps 14, Block 2, Lots 5, 11A, 18, 39, and 39A and 39B, and is collectively 65.77 acres. In a document dated July 13th, 2026, Timothy Spang, Louise Spang, and Jameson Spang authorized Gregory Braun, Esquire of Braun Law, to represent them in matters related to their conditional use application. The board waived the application requirement by the applicant to mail a complete copy of all materials to each board member at least 14 days prior to the hearing. The applicant confirmed that the program operates Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. with a minimum 2-day enrollment across 3 sessions running September 8th through July 10th, and the following year, and a 4-week summer session in July from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. to the end of August. Pardon? It's only in July? Okay. The applicant stated that the use will not create significant hazards to pedestrians or vehicular traffic or significant congestion. Arrivals about 9 o'clock and departures at 3 p.m. for up to 18 children and a small staff fall outside the commuter peaks. Access is from Granite Heights Road, and on-site parking and a turnaround are provided so that the vehicles enter and leave without queuing or backing into the road. Trip generation is minimal to employees and parents, guardian drop-off and pickup. Section 240-969G requires that 1 off-street parking space per 4 children for a child care center. For 18 children, 5 spaces are required. The findings: the site provides for more than 5 off-street spaces together with staff parking and an on-site turnaround positioned so that the vehicles enter and exit in forward gear without backing into Granite Heights Road. The board believes the applicant met the requirement of this land use ordinance. Sanitary facilities were discussed for the temporary toiletry facilities supplied on site. The applicant confirmed that there's 3 to 4 5-gallon holding tanks are used to bring hot water for hand washing facilities. don't worry about that section. That was from our other discussions. No abutter correspondence was received from the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding this proposed application. The applicant and the board were supplied by the town planner memo reviewing application dated June 16th of 2026 with outstanding comments regarding owner's authorization and confirmation of adequate sanitary capacity. Applicant provided additional resources and supplemental information, including resending missing abutter notices from the first public hearing on June 22nd of 2026. On June 22nd, 2026, the applicant submitted a response including the authorization, representation, and owner's consent executed by Timothy and Louise Spang, and a statement regarding the sanitary facilities, both as part of the record. The Zoning Board of Appeals reviewed the standards set forth in Section 249.2H, conditional uses subject to the Zoning Board of Appeals review under Article 4, may be approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals after considering the characteristics and location of the proposed use and the other properties in the surrounding neighborhood, provided that the petitioner shall submit to the Zoning Board of Appeals statements in writing, which may be accompanied by diagrams and photographs, which shall become part of the record for such petitions, demonstrating that the proposed use will meet the definition and specific requirements set forth in this chapter for the particular use. The use as a child care center, the A is your findings. So there is no applicable performance standards for Article 7 that would apply for this application for a child care center conditional use. Under the definition for a child care center, under Section 240.2.2, the board confirmed that the proposed use application meets the definition of this section. Will not have a significant detrimental effect on the use and peaceful enjoyment of abutting property as a result of noise, vibrations, fumes, odors, dust, light, glare, or other cause. Findings, a neighboring property abutter stated at the July 13th, 2026 concerns with pedestrian safety and traffic. The board determined, sorry.
Should the small a be like a 1 or something? Because it goes A, B, A.
It's like a subsection A. The board determined that this would be a universal concern and would not cause a significant detrimental effect. I think I captured that correctly from your discussions.
Yep.
Will not have a significant adverse effect on the adjacent or nearby property values. No findings to the negative. Will not result in significant hazards to pedestrian or vehicular traffic or significant traffic congestion. And again, the same comment, a neighboring property abutter stated that on July 13, 2026, concerns with pedestrian safety and traffic. The applicant provided supplemental information regarding hours of operation and how the hours of drop-off and pickup will not impact traffic congestion for the area. The applicant confirmed that construction traffic is not going to be impacted by the proposed conditional use, and construction vehicles stay less than 10 miles per hour. The board determined that this is a universal concern and would not cause a significant detrimental effect. The board found no findings to the negative. E, will result in significant fire danger. The abutter stated concerns in the public hearing regarding the use of fire stoves. The applicant responded that they will meet all building code requirements for life safety, which was confirmed by this code enforcement officer in attendance. No findings to the negative. Item F, will not result in significant flood hazards or flood damage, drainage problems, ground or surface water contamination, or soil erosion. The zoning boards of appeals did not find any significant findings regarding flood hazard, flood damage, drainage issues, or soil erosion. The board heard a briefing and supplemental information from the town's code enforcement officer, the applicant's attorney, and the town staff regarding the wastewater and sanitary facilities requirements for a child care center in Maine. The board determined that the evaluation of the sanitary and wastewater facilities will be best suited by the planning board and CEO. In addition, with the proposed use is to be located in the shoreline zone or resource protection zone, the zoning board of appeals shall make a positive finding that the proposed use will comply with the standards established in section 240-10.10b subsections A to 1 to 8 of this chapter. The zoning board determined that this provision is not applicable. The public hearing was held on June 22nd of 2026 and was properly advertised. However, not all appropriate abutters were properly notified. The public hearing was rescheduled for July 13th of 2026 after being properly advertised and all appropriate abutters were properly notified.
Should we change, reschedule to continue?
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue to?
Sorry.
Continue to.
I should have said that, sorry.
On July 13th, 2026, a public hearing, a resident at 200 Arundel Road, a direct abutter, stated during the hearing desire for fire safety and concerns with pedestrian safety. Was there anything else I missed with his testimony? I want to make sure I...
He mentioned boundaries,
Yeah, the boundary.
And boundary concerns? If I can spell. On July 13th, 2026, the public hearing questions were raised regarding if the proposed use is subjected to the state licensing requirements, which was affirmed by the applicant's agent. The town's code enforcement officer provided clarification regarding the memo dated July 10th of 2026 regarding the need for an HHE 200 form as part of the review in conformance under section 249.2, subsection H1F. The CEO mentioned that portable toilet facilities are not suitable for the use. I should say that. Regardless of the licensing requirements by the state, the burden will be on the applicant to show how the local municipal reviewing authority that the proposed use meets the site requirements.
To show, wait a minute,
Is that-
that's, to show the local municipal reviewing authority how the proposed use meets the site requirements.
You gotta move that.
Yeah.
How instead of that? How instead of that? Yeah.
where am I at?
How before that? Bottom line, bottom click line.
Reviewing authority, how?
The applicant stated that the use of portable toilets in operation had been in use for the last 18 months. Conclusions. Do you need me to say this again, the conclusions?
No.
Okay. The vote for each of the 6 subsections, 9.2, H1, subsections A through F, discussed separately but voted on collectively, was 5 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. Accordingly, the board granted approval of the application.
Nicely done.
And then here is the signature page, which I think I have everyone's name spelled correctly. I'll just need you to come into the office this week to sign it.
And we've changed, so Kate is now the vice chair.
What is it?
That's right. Whoops. that's
Kate,
right.
Kate is now the vice chair, and
Oh, sorry.
I'm just a regular guy.
And if you want, and if you want to be strictly, Galen, if you want to be strictly legal on my signature, it should be Kathleen's.
Did you want to say something about that? Do we, do we state anywhere clearly that this is a conditional use in the farm and forest?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have it on the application.
It was in it, yep.
It's in the findings.
Can I see?
I'll have to work on the spaces, but that's your findings, so I need a motion to approve those findings.
I move that we approve the findings as stated.
Can I just see where
Sorry.
it is stated that it's a permitted use with,
It's not permitted.
It's not permitted, it's a
Not
conditional use.
conditional use with ZBA approval, review?
I thought it's at the very top. Conditional use application.
Yeah, it's in farm and forest.
Right above it.
Is that better?
That works.
Yeah.
I heard a motion.
I heard a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor with a hand and a verbal? Aye. Opposed? None? Findings are adopted? Thank you. Thank you. Do we have anything else to discuss, board members?
I don't think so.
God forbid.
No, I don't think so.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. Alan, to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.